All right, YouTube, this Detroit's HPTV coming to you out of Detroit, back with another video on this Wednesday morning. Now, a lot of my subscribers, whenever I do a reaction and I talk about The View, the women of The View, the cackling hens, or as they like to be called, the witches of The View, they kind of don't like it because they don't like their rhetoric. But we have to pay attention to what they say on there because they are controlled by the network and they push the company line. They push that agenda. So everything that they say, you can best believe it's the narrative that the powers that be want to put out to control and manipulate the minds of the masses. See, this is a propaganda tool. This is not real news. This is what has brainwashed people for years. People sit in front of their TVs and they watch these people and they listen to them and they take what they say to heart, not knowing they're paid propagandists and their rhetoric is orchestrated to create a narrative in your head so that you really are brainwashed. This is what mainstream media has been doing for years, and this is why people are saying that the new independent media that comes with YouTube and social media has destroyed mainstream media because now they're not the only people with a narrative. They're not the only people who can give you the news. They're not the only people who can weigh in on politics or what's going on in society. Now, if you've seen or if you've been following the news, I did a video on how ABC has just settled with 15 million for defamation of Donald Trump. Donald Trump and his party are suing more news outlets for defamation and lying and slander and the weaponization of the judicial system. Now, they did this with the constituents of the Democratic Party cheering them on. You had your feminist, and you know the feminist organization was really started by the CIA to destroy the nuclear family. That's what the feminist movement origins are, with the CIA and black women attached on to that as feminists, as if they wanted some type of equality with the powers that be. And this is how, at some point, they became the de facto backbone of the Democratic Party, which had always had an agenda to destroy the nuclear family. So when they became the backbone of the Democratic Party, they became the tool that the Democratic Party used to destroy the nuclear family in our communities. Let me say that to you again so you can understand. When the black women attached themselves to the feminist movement, which was started by the CIA and was directed at destroying the nuclear family, as they excelled within that feminist movement, the Democratic Party called them the backbone of the Democratic Party and the backbone of the black community, which they had designated for destruction. And by destroying the nuclear family and destroying our communities, they were the tool. They were the tool. This is why they were incentivized to break up their homes through governmental benefits like Section 8 or food stamps or whatever they needed, the programs where they could go and get educated or whatever. And this is not all women, so this is not no diatribe where I'm running down women. I'm telling you what the government did. The government incentivized the destruction of the nuclear family. They had just witnessed the nuclear family stand together through civil rights and Jim Crow and become a force in their communities. If you're from Detroit, you remember, well, a lot of you is not old enough to remember Black Bottom, Paradise Valley, where those were black thriving communities, like Black Wall Street, where you had the nuclear family, you had the men owning the barbershops and owning the businesses in the community. When I grew up in Highland Park, Michigan, and you walked up Hamilton, black men and black families owned the stores, the record shops, the gas stations. They were the teachers in the community. There were nuclear families. There was grandfathers and fathers. Then all of a sudden, there was a drastic change. And you start hearing that, oh, the black woman is the backbone of the black community. Not when I was growing up. When I was growing up, all the men worked at Ford Motor Company and Chrysler and General Motors, and they were married, and we went to church, and we went to picnics, and we had family reunions. And people who had children out of wedlock, that wasn't promoted. That wasn't promoted. That was frowned upon. But then they had this movement sponsored by the Democratic Party, and they used their propaganda. So we move it all the way up today to where people were willing to vote for Kamala Harris because she said when she wanted to be president that she identified with black women and she was black. But before that, she had ran her campaign as the first Indian woman to become a DA, the first Indian woman to become a senator. But then she realized that, as they had said, the black woman was the backbone of the Democratic Party. So her getting their vote and possibly the men vote and the women's vote, which was a feminist ploy at usurping governmental power, they thought they could pull it off. They thought they could shame black men into voting for this Indian woman. They thought they could call us misogynist and every type of name in the book. And they never even considered that we would not vote for late term termination of pregnancy all the way to the 8th month, gender reassignment for our children, and surgery at 8 years old to change their gender, open borders so we would have competition in the job market, identity politics that placed us at the bottom of the social stratosphere. They actually thought we were that dumb that we would vote for the destruction of ourselves. This is why we're talking about The View today. Because The View sat there and they pushed all this propaganda. They said that if you were conservative and you voted conservative, you were a low information voter. You were dumb. You were slow. That's at the least. At the worst, you were a fascist and a Nazi because they wanted to push that agenda into our communities that would have destroyed us. It would have been a new form of ethnic cleansing. It would have been a new form of social genocide. They wanted to defund the police. So if somebody breaks in your house, there's nobody to call. Everything that they pushed at you was to undermine the country. They had an anti-God, anti-Christ, anti-man, anti-family agenda that you wanted to vote for. And now you see with the conservatives in power at the Senate, the House, the presidency, and the Supreme Court, they were kicking and screaming, but the closer it gets to January, the more they realize it's over. You have people like Stephen Smith and Van Jones coming out saying, okay, we tried it, we lost. These were the elites. These were the people who were headed toward globalism, with international bankers controlling the destiny of the people. They were betraying the people. This was treason. And then they want to tell you, oh, Donald Trump, he's a felon. Well, you know, this country was founded by people who was considered felons. George Washington and Thomas Jefferson and Benjamin Franklin and John Quincy Adams and John Hancock, they were all considered felons. Everybody that signed the Declaration of Independence signed it under penalty of losing their lives because they were going against the monarchy. And what we just witnessed in our country was the grassroots and the common man going against an aristocracy. They kept telling you that Donald Trump was a threat to democracy, knowing that this is not even a democracy. This is a constitutional republic that was being taken over by aristocrats and becoming an aristocracy where the rich got richer and the poor got poorer. And while they eroded the moral fiber of the community and introduced us to a new form of communism, neo-communism. And it started with a lot of these propagandists. So without further ado, I'm going to get into this video. And I want you to watch how Sonny Hostin, Whoopi Goldberg, and Ann Navarro, and these women who were misleading and directing the minds of women out there who had just previously been brainwashed by the soap operas back in the day, like General Hospital and As the World Turns and The Guiding Light and all those other soap operas that used to make them think that their lives weren't as meaningful as Carol Brady's and the rest of the people that they seen on TV. This was a new programming, and it's unraveling right before your eyes. So let's see how they have changed their tune. Without further ado, let's get into the clip. I'm reacting to Wise at A Righteous Perspective. I always like to react to his videos. And this is for fair usage under the 1976 Copyright Act for education and commentary, and I'm standing on the First Amendment. Check this out.
Interesting, because in the article he quotes, I forgot the exact quote, but he said something about how it's become the party of college professors and, you know, like it's this removed group of highly educated. And I think the conversations around that, because the people on the other side were voting for Donald Trump, oftentimes those voters were kind of put in a bucket of not being smart and spoken down to. So I think it's a strange thing because
Now, how insulting is that? These women says, if you were voting for the conservatives and Donald Trump, that you considered not smart, but they're the smart ones, huh? They lost the House, the Senate, the presidency, and the Supreme Court, but they're the smart ones. How often is the biggest loser the smartest one in the room?
I don't even fully identify what the Democratic Party is anymore. It's not recognizable to me. And the right, the same can go. The fact that they're becoming an isolationist party when, you know, that we see so much going on in the world and we understand the ramifications of the chess game and all of that.
Maybe it's time for the Democrats to do a little bit of this post-mortem, because the Democratic Party has always been the party of the working class. Has always been. If you look at all...
The Democratic Party was the party of the working class because the Democratic Party was the party of slavery, Jim Crow, the Ku Klux Klan, redlining, and cheap labor. So, of course, they would be the party of the working class, seeing how they were the party of slavery, redlining, Jim Crow. Let's read between the lines here, people.
The policies, they're for the people. And I think even myself, as someone who grew up in abject poverty from the Bronx, my parents lived paycheck to...
Listen to her tell you this lie. She's finna lie. This is a lie. We already know she went to Ivy League schools, but she's finna lie just to try to identify with you. This is how deep they rabbit hole of misinformation goes. She's finna tell you a bold-faced lie.
Paycheck. They had to decide whether or not they were going to feed me or whether or not we were going to have heat. And I remember that. And I think I missed the boat.
Hey, welcome back to the channel with your man Wise. I never thought we'd see the day Sonny Hostin and the crew, the cackling heads on The View, are practically waving the white flag. A Democratic senator went on The View a few days ago and dismantled their entire worldview right to their faces. Well, it seems like his message actually resonated with them because things are starting to crack. First, we got Sarah Haynes admitting she doesn't even recognize the Democratic Party anymore. And then we have Alyssa Farah just flat out says the quiet part out loud, nobody cares about Trump being labeled a convicted felon. You heard that right. This panel is finally acknowledging the disconnect between the Democrats and the American people. Now let's dig into what they're saying. Sarah points out something that's been glaringly obvious for a while. The Democratic Party has become the party of ivory tower elites, college professor, and highly educated, and people so far removed from everyday voters that they've lost touch entirely. Meanwhile, the voters they dismissed as unintelligent or uninformed deplorables were the ones rallying behind Trump because he actually spoke to their concerns: unfair trade deals, job loss, in the sense that America was being taken advantage of. And here's the kicker: Sarah straight up admits she no longer understands what the Democratic Party even stands for. And honestly, who can blame her? When your party's priorities are so out of sync with the working class voters that they claim to champion, it's no wonder they're losing ground. Like, share, subscribe to the channel. Let's go.
Party today. And if you were to ask me who the nominee will be in 2028, I think it'll be J.D. Vance.
Donald John Trump is going to raise his hand on the King James Bible and take the oath of office. Since it doesn't actually say consecutive, that, I don't know, maybe we do it again in 28.
You know, I don't believe that's possible because there's a constitution and there's an age limit. And I believe at the end of this term, he will have aged out. I believe they're going to check.
The 22nd Amendment.
I believe, but they're going to check it for me. So don't get mad at me yet. You know, the folks are going to check. But what is they talking about?
Well, I didn't think it was really a breaking news headline that Donald Trump has taken over the Republican Party, but I love Mitt Romney. I volunteered on his campaign. I'm going to miss him. I think he was a voice of reason and somebody.
If you look at their language, like even this tells you how they manipulate the minds of people, and they really do think you are stupid. If you watch that show, they think you stupid. They appeal to a lower intellect because, you know, not too long ago they were saying that Donald Trump was a fascist. He was a Nazi, and there would be no more voting. And, you know, now they're relying on the Constitution, but they said he was going to tear the Constitution up. You know what I mean? But now, everything that they were telling you to try to discredit him so that they could slide in the cause plan committee, they're backtracking on him. Now, she says Donald Trump has taken over the Republican Party. How would you take over something where you were nominated as the head of it? You know what I mean? He had to be their nominee. So the takeover is really the people's choice. Just like they want to say conservatives had taken over the country. Conservatives didn't take over the country. The people voted for conservatism. They voted against your late-term termination of pregnancy. They voted against your gender reassignment for children. They voted against your anti-God, anti-Christian, anti-family agenda. They didn't want your Luciferic, nefarious, satanic policies. They voted against it.
Who like to work across the aisle and represented more where I come from in the GOP. But we're witnessing kind of a tectonic shift of political realignment. The Republican Party is now the party of the working class. It's the party of not wanting American intervention abroad. It's the one talking about how we need to end forever wars. And you've got the Democratic Party that in many ways it's a lot of higher educated people, higher net worth people. And it's a flipping on ahead of what we thought of 20 years ago.
Remember what I told you? How they said, how I explained to you that the country was being taken over by an aristocracy, aristocrats. She just said it to you. That they were highly educated. They were the elite. They were better than the common man. She just said it. She just said the quiet part out loud to you. This is why they were so invested in you believing their narrative and towing the line, because you are the serfs, the slaves, the uneducated. She just told you. We're the educated. We're the elite. We're the aristocrats. You follow us.
I think a lot of people feel like they don't fit cleanly into either of them. In some ways, I feel that way. But he is right. Trump is the dominant force in Republican politics. I don't think it's going back, but I hope there's Republicans who work within the party to keep guardrails on it and to make it something, those of us who've been members of it our whole lives could be part of.
So there's no age limit
to be president or to be Supreme Court justice. There's term limits for president, and there is an age minimum. You've got to be a certain
35
age to be right, but not. But you could be 120 and still be.
Exactly. That just goes to show you how much these people don't know. I mean, Whoopi's not the brightest star in the sky. Let's just keep it real.
President.
Then why didn't anybody bring that up? They kept saying that somebody was too old. Didn't we hear that?
It wasn't about him being too old. It was the fact that he was suffering from a severe cognitive decline, Whoopi.
Look at me going backwards.
We will never allow the Democratic Party to become in power again so that they can put these Medeas and they could be taking advice from these bitter old biddies. They'll never win again. They'll never usurp the authority that they attempted to usurp. Listen to them. Listen to them. They're not going to fight in any wars. They're not going to do any heavy lifting. They're the aristocrats. They just want to tell the rest of the dummies what to do.
Go ahead, baby.
So I don't think it's accurate to say that Mitt Romney was a vocal opponent and critic of MAGA. I think he's still but I think he still is. My point is, I don't think he's changed. I think what I think you're hearing from Mitt Romney is Mitt Romney being realistic to the point, to the fact that for people like Mitt Romney, like the Bushes, like, a John McCain Republican, like me, frankly, we have zero space right now, zero influence. It doesn't feel that it's very representative. This is certainly not on foreign policy, on social issues, on fiscal issues. Who would have ever thought that the Republican Party would be...
We voted you out. We didn't want you guys having any more power or any more say-so about anything. We didn't want you to have a say-so about the education. We didn't want you to have any say-so about the border. We wanted it exactly the way it is. This is what the people wanted. We wanted the feminists and the weirdos over there on the left and the Hollywood and the false prophets, the apostate preachers. We wanted all of you guys out of power because you was leading the country to hell. So, of course, we don't want you to have no say-so.
Advocating for a tariff war. I mean, that's just, it's supposed to be the free trade party. But this is where we are. And I think if Donald Trump had lost, we'd be talking about the resurgence and reinvention of the Republican Party. But Donald Trump won. And
well, we're talking about tariffs, one, because this federal income tax thing that's just destroying businesses and companies and people out there, it's against the law as per the United States Supreme Court Justice. You go back to the 1800s, late 1800s, early 1900s, we received most of our tax revenue via tariffs. So we're not really doing anything but going back to what worked. And in the early years of the United States of America, she brought up the Bushes and the McCains. These are all establishment Republicans. Trump's not a politician, lifelong, and he's definitely not a part of the establishment. And that's the problem. They want establishment folks, and the American people don't want people that are that old guard, a part of the establishment. We don't.
At BetMGM, everyone gets a welcome offer. So whether you're courtside trying to hit the over
on it.
So most definitely, his dominance over the party is a fact. Yeah. Whether I like it or not, whether Mitt likes it or not, it's okay.
But I agree. He is the party. And as I've been saying, I think that the Republican Party maybe needs to reframe the question instead of thinking about what the Democrats need to do. Maybe think about why is a convicted felon so attracted to this country, or why are we so attracted, so many of us who are convicted felon and Elon Musk, who said you will feel the working class temporary hardships. Since when is the
Isn't he the
Republican
richest
Party?
man in the world?
Yes, he is.
Okay,
and he's not going to have any temporary hardships. But then I'm kind of rethinking my thinking, and I do think that maybe it's time for the Democrats to do a little bit of this postmortem, because the Democratic Party has always been the party of the working class, has always been. If you look at all the policies, they're for the people. And I think even myself, as someone who grew up in abject poverty from the Bronx, my parents lived paycheck to paycheck. They had to decide whether or not they were going to feed me or whether or not we were going to have heat. And I remember that. And I think I missed the boat in terms of realizing that there are so many Americans that still have that experience that I grew up with and that members of my family grew up with. And so I think we need to make space in this tent for the people that are really going to need it, because I got to tell you, I don't think the Republican Party is the party of the working class. I think they will hurt the working class. And so it is up to those of us who remember how that feels or who cares about that to reach out and say, come back, we can help you. And I intend myself, what little I can do, to try to do that more. Well,
Democrats have sold the country out, and they for daggone sure sold out their constituents, at least their poorer constituents, because those people don't donate to campaigns. And here you have a Sunny Hostin who says that she comes from that, but I mean, we really don't know. We really don't know if it's telling the truth. Is it the same, I grew up in a middle-class family just like Kamala? We don't know.
It's interesting because in the article he quotes, I forgot the exact quote, but he said something about how it's become the party of college professors and, it's this removed group of highly educated. And I think the conversations around that, because the people on the other side were voting for Donald Trump, oftentimes those voters were kind of put in a bucket of not being smart and spoken down to. So I think it's a strange thing because I don't
See, he's showing this again as we walk through what they're really saying. You know what I mean? You have to pay attention that these people, these elitists, they're eating crow now. And they talking about come back. Remember I showed you the video yesterday where Roland Martin calls himself chastising Stephen A. Smith. Nobody is going back to the plantation. No, so, at this point, ABC, CNN, and the rest of them, they're trying to tell you, tone down your rhetoric. Find a way to appeal back to black people or your audience. But we rejected you guys because we know for a fact that you sold the country out. You were Benedict Arnold's to us.
Even fully identify what the Democratic Party is anymore. It's not recognizable to me. And the right, the same can go. The fact that they're becoming an isolationist party when that we see so much going on in the world and we understand the ramifications of the chess game and all of that. But I do think what's most interesting is that Donald Trump supposedly reached the working class, but I don't grasp what parts are going to benefit them. So was being heard enough? Was it just being heard by a candidate? Because his plans don't break down to helping them.
But I think it was,
How does the plan not help when you have a bunch of people, undocumented people that shouldn't be here, taking jobs, crime through the roof in those neighborhoods that a lot of working and poor people live in? Like, how would they not benefit? Not to mention, did you not just hear about the $100 billion investment in this country that's going to bring 100,000 jobs? And typically when that happens, it also spurs growth in other industries and from other companies. So as much as they're turning on the Democrat Party and admitting and waving the white flag, they're still also trying to find a way to point the finger and say, well, we know that we've lost people, but there's no way that Trump can help those folks. And that's where they're wrong. That's where they're wrong. And they're going to figure it out. I don't think people are ever really going back to the Democratic Party the way they did back in the past. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that the Democrats, this elitist, far-left, progressive, Marxist, communist party, they are so far removed from the issues that regular people are having to deal with that they can't get out of their own way. I am glad to see that they're kind of trying to admit that we messed up, but they're still trying to point the finger and blame Trump or blame the Republican Party or still have their nose in the air and say that, yeah, they supported Trump, but those folks don't know what they're talking about. They don't know what they've really done. And the reality of it is, you have a certain sector communities in this country that's been voting Democrats for a long time, and their plight hadn't changed much in this country. So, yes, it is time for something new. And honestly, I don't 100% trust the Republican Party, especially those establishment folks. I don't trust them at all. And I'm on record on this channel saying that it's past time for a third party. And maybe this MAGA movement, this MAGA party is something that could morph a new third party in this country that can compete with the Democrats and those establishment Republicans. But let me know what you guys think about this in the comment section. Like, share, subscribe, click that join button down below. Join the ARP family.
Shout out to Wise over there. But if you follow everything that was said, you can see that they're coming to a realization of what just happened with this election cycle. But they've left their constituents and their base disillusioned and basically having mental meltdowns because they still are saying that there's a chance for them to be back in power. The Democrats are finished. People have rejected their feminism. People have rejected their LGBTQ agenda. People have rejected everything about that party. People have rejected their anti-God, their anti-Christian agenda. They're finished. And the bigger issue is those people who supported them and those people who found their policies and agenda to be the most important things for them to vote for, they're at a loss. They don't know what they're going to do. You know? I guess acceptance of this loss will come in time, but as of right now, they haven't realized that what they were planning for the American people has failed. God is in control of this whole situation, and the wickedness that they had planned for the people will never manifest. Well, that's all I have for you on this Wednesday. Sanders, you at Detroit. This is Detroit's HPTV. Support the nonprofit Detroit's Black Dawn Ash Collective. The Cash App is in the channel description. As always, salute to all patrons. Keep your head on a swivel. Like, share, and subscribe. Peace. Hit that like button.